Garden and Theobald's been around since 1830 something, so as long as many of the schools that you come from, quite as long as yours, Elizabeth. But we operate as project and cost managers for people who are mostly occupiers, and so we get involved in that interface between the operation as a business and the need to create a new piece of property as an investment. And that means we have to understand the business, we have to understand what makes it tick, and then we have to understand how they use property and try and mould that property to make their business work better. So buildings are interesting, and I can talk about pedagogy all day and enjoy different shapes of classroom. But actually what really turns me on is making buildings work for businesses. And as it happens, I've done quite a lot in an educational environment. And education is interesting because we do lots of things in educational buildings. We meet each other, we have moments of serendipity, we do a bit of learning, we probably eat something, we sit down and we work as in a kind of traditional office way, and then we have lots of fun. And so they need to operate in lots of different ways, and they need to do lots of different things, and that makes them perhaps more difficult than other buildings. So I've enjoyed doing them, and I've enjoyed being around them as well. And in fact, the school where I'm a governor is Thomas Deacon, which I built, and because I'd enjoyed it and I got quite close to the sponsors, they asked me to stay on and be a governor, and I still am there, and actually it has no corridors. So starting with the governors, and here I'm drawing on both my own interest. We as a governing body are now building a Key Stage 2 school so that we can become a Key Stage 2 through to sixth form academy, and that's been an interesting process for me, looking at it from the other side, but also looking at our clients. Governors have the fiduciary responsibility of keeping the school afloat, and they have the long-term responsibility of making sure that it stays around as an institution. So they are, if you like, the guardians. They're the employer. They're the people who are going to come up with the money. And they need to be sure that there's an exit plan if the project doesn't work. But the trouble is they're time poor. As a governing body, my school, we meet 6 times a year, and we get 2 hours in the room together. We probably have some committees along the way, and we read lots of papers. But in that time, we will make or break a project. And so as the people bringing the project forward, we need to be aware of that. And here we have the essential tension in the project, because we as people who are close to the project and actually the principal, we're spending quite a lot of time on the project, and we may then forget that the governors need to make all of those things work. They need to be able to protect their ability to raise and borrow. If you mortgage the school up to the hilt, then doing the next project in 5 years' time will become more difficult. They need to protect the school from something going wrong and needing to find another £5 million to deal with a particular problem. And the role of the bursar is particularly important here, because the bursar will probably be the governor's eyes and ears on the rest of the project. By comparison, the principal is usually the keeper of the vision. This is the person who will have the educational background and the educational ideas to be able to bring a project forward. And that person has generally a lower time horizon than most of the governors. Principals move on, clearly, and they want to leave a good legacy, but they're particularly keen on being able to keep results and to grow results, and that probably means investing in buildings now, and that may be a different point to the one in which the governors are interested in. They tend to be strong characters because they're in control. They're the ones who manage the school, and they're in charge. And so they tend to be very good at pressing the boundaries with the project team and expanding the scheme. And as project managers, as the people that keep control of the scheme, we need to be mindful of both that constituency and that of the governors. In terms of other stakeholders, the staff have much shorter horizons tends to be around the results cycle, and often they don't even have a stake in the project at all, because they may not be in the school in the 3 or 4 years' time that the project will take to bring forward. But there are opportunities to advance, and a new science building that we've heard quite a lot about St Paul's today, but that is an opportunity for the head of science at St Paul's to move their career on. But in many cases, teaching staff don't have a stake. Parents and children have an extremely short horizon. If you miss out a key stage because you've been disrupted by a building project, you're not going to recover from that. So we need to be mindful of that, and we need to understand how those people are driven. So this is a way, and actually there are lots of ways, but this is a way of setting up a project. And we find that that's particularly important. The governing body meets irregularly and doesn't have the headspace to be able to deal with a project minutiae. We really need a project steering group, a board, as I've described it here, to meet about once a month, and that's too much for full governing body. So we would anticipate a level of delegation from the governing body, and this is used to control the principal stakeholders of the project and balance them. So we would always see, because it is the governor's money, a senior governor being the chair of the governing body. That person doesn't necessarily need to have the vision, because the vision probably comes from the principal, but that person needs to share that vision, but also needs to understand the wider context and be able to be the final arbiter when it comes to making decisions. The head teacher or principal will sit on that group. Critically, also the bursar will sit on that group. And we then need to create enough capacity in that group to be able to take the decisions. And talking to Richard earlier, he's just been brought onto a governing body to do exactly that. So this group then will co-opt some people with skills, and it needs to meet about once a month. And its role is to understand the vision, understand how that affects the financial model for the school, be able to take the investment decisions, and then be able to control the project as it moves forward, and give the project team their decisions. So typical decisions might be firstly, to sign off the brief. The brief will come with a budget and a programme, and that will then be pushed into the bursar's financial models of how the school will work. Then, as the project moves forward, to sign off robustly the various RIBA stages and make sure that those are compliant with the brief and the budget. And in this way, we bring the project forward with agreement between the stakeholders in how this will work, and each of the stakeholders is brought into the process and becomes part of an owner with it. The wider school sits off to one side, and they will probably have an educational planner, somebody who is responsible for doing the calculations on numbers of classrooms, how the school will work from an educational perspective, and those people will feed into the project board, and then a project manager, which is a role that we often take to control the team below. I've written down here just a few points which I hope will link back to the points I made earlier about governance. The way to achieve a successful project is, first off, to agree what it is that you're building. Now, that sounds bleak, but actually, we come across loads of projects where the principal has one vision, the bursar has another vision, the governors think they're getting something else, and the whole thing runs away with itself. And that first point, spend longer on that than anything else, and you will end up with a decent project. The business case is absolutely critical. We need the school to still be run 5 years after this project is finished. We need it not just to be running, we need it to be generating additional surpluses. We've heard lots about that today. We need to have a strong school representative. We come across too many projects where people walk into this school and say, gosh, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Could you just... and that costs you a load at the end. We need to get a solid risk transfer to the contractor. professional team will advise on that, but actually governing bodies are risk averse, and they need to be able to transfer risk to the contractor. So achieving that whilst remaining in control of the design is the holy grail. We do that by taking design through to a point where we've dealt with the critical part and seeking to transfer as much as possible. The head teacher leaving is something which most clients then say can't possibly happen, and B, if it does, nothing will change. It's a really, really critical change to the school, and we need to be mindful of that and keep enough flexibility and be able to be persuasive to governors that we have enough flexibility in the project to be able to allow for change in educational practice.